plan. Good to know. Recording in public. This is becoming a theme, Junjun. Keep getting interrupted. Like I say, I think the reality is if we can address change management through showing people benefits for them, if we can address the concept of detachment and disengagement by using technology, I think the advancement is going to be much better than what we would ever have seen up until this point. But I think the one big thing is that there's a commonality. Look, we're all from different sectors. I might be in housing. I work right next to the people that build 100-story skyscrapers. I work with people that do infrastructure. We all have the same challenges. We're doing things the old way, the slow way, the hard way. We need to all adopt technology, and we need to engage with people in order to appreciate the value so they want to change, not so they're forced to change.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Obviously, this is an ecosystem in development. So, it's just, a lot of collaboration and all that needs to happen. So, Tommy, like obviously you've been working in this SHM space for a very long time. Your experience in Hong Kong and now with academia and now working with industry for a long time. So, what's your thoughts around challenges and how things have evolved over the period of time?
Yes, what David mentioned earlier is quite valid. It takes 5 to 6 years at least to help people to begin to appreciate something new. So when I first come to Australia in 2007, at that time, I came from Hong Kong. They have big bridges there, and I call them my toys because I have played a lot of SHM games there. But when I first came to Australia, nothing there. So when I try to convince others about SHM and all that, the people here in Australia a little bit hesitated. But now, after that many years, we are moving to another stage. Now people know that SHM can work. They have values, and they started to try to see what they can do. But at that time, we also need to be aware of, are we moving too fast? So at the moment, a lot of time when we look at SHM, talking about digitizing transformation and all that, maybe sometimes we may give people something overpromise or different expectations. That's the challenge at the moment, that sometimes the asset owner, the users, they may consider, oh, that could do that, and they are so happy. Now, before 13 years ago, it is better. But if they are thinking that SHM or all these are so good, and then they expect something differently, or sometimes some people, I am an SHM advocate, but I myself always try to be sure I will not overpromise. I will just try to tell people what at the moment that we could do, and what maybe in the next 5 years that we could do, and then in the future, what we can do that could help the growth of SHM in a much more healthier way. That is something that when we are talking about, when we use the SHM, I think we can have a lot of data, a lot of information. When we talk with the asset owner, they would like to have what they call the evidence-based decision-making. So we can't just show that, oh, this, and then can help your management, but they would like to see how actually they could help. That is something that I think we, as the organization leader, I would like to help to demonstrate that in a better way, so that people will know that the SHM can grow healthier than expected. Otherwise, if we have too much overpromise and also different expectation, I always mention about the story of the wolf is coming, but actually there is no wolf. So that is something that we really need to be careful and work on it. Okay.
Right, thanks, Tommy. Chen, so you did a fantastic presentation there. You summarized a lot of challenges and opportunities there as well. So coming in from a sort of technology background and being a bit of a futurist as well, with all the emergence of technologies and all that sort of, and working with the clients in delivering SHM projects, where do you think the gaps are to make it more pervasive?
Yeah, I think I think more or less the speakers are already touching on those points. And speaking from an organization point of view, I think eventually the SHM, twinning, or other digital systems needs to touch the ground and generate business profits, benefits. And that's related to change management. You need to have change management to actually install the new process and new ways of doing business. So I think when we are designing SHM and other digital systems, we need to bear this in mind, how this can eventually be linked up with change management, and also how can it be integrated with upstream and downstream business workflows, so we can actually derive benefits from it, instead of being a fancy gadget. People touch on the tangent, from time to time, but not knowing exactly how we can derive the concrete business benefit from it. I think that's one of my perception from the conversation and the experience that I've got from the previous engagements. Yeah. The other one on technology, I said it before, the cost is one thing. You have to survive the scaling factor. If this cost is expensive, how can we bring it down? How can we make the sensing network more resilient, more serviceable, more scalable? Yeah, that's on the technology side. In Australia, I think we are also shortage of brain power. So from a long-term, more sustainable from point of view, how can we bring up talents? How we can attract talents to work in this particular industry, this field? It's something very pertinent to this problem. In a university, engage with the industry. Just a few ideas, food for thought. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Chen. And Tuan, obviously, you've got background in this area, but also you're very strong in industry, university collaboration with CRC, Building 4.0, and lots of other sort of high-profile university industry collaboration projects. Obviously, I see that as a pocket of brilliance, but it's not sort of widespread, as a practiced across Australia. So what do you think are the gaps and how we can sort of change that industry university collaboration?
Thank you, Govinda. And of course, I really want to say I really enjoyed the three keynotes presentation this morning. Actually, there are so many challenges already been mentioned before. From my side, because I've been working in this field for quite a long time, and of course, I had a lot of collaboration with industry. I see this is a really challenging time for our industry, because over the last 50 years, the productivity hasn't changed in construction. We are really facing the huge pipeline of projects coming up. Industry are facing with the labor shortage, material costs, and all the supply chain disruption. But with our digital transformation, I think we really going to not even survive, but probably coming down if we really don't adopt technology. So from the gap industry, the demand, I can see there's a huge demand for digital transformation. But why? Why we haven't seen this adoption? I can see from my own perspective, the trust from users, from public. I have to say we have seen a lot of brilliant examples, good stories, but also I think there are a lot of failures. I just don't want to mention name, but we see companies spend a lot of public money, but they still didn't deliver. And if we go back to Tommy's comment, are we overpromised? Is that the technology we said? I think as Chen, I think you said about scalability and the cost, but also the trust. We need to make sure whatever we do in this forum with the technology, with the of course how we can make sure that people can use that in chain management. But I think we have to deliver the trust so people can see this is a way to go. So I think maybe can have more to add, but that's something I think if we can do it. Tackle that problem, I think we can get more public acceptance, user acceptance.
Thanks, Tuan. Bizan, you are the international authority in this space. You've been working in this area for a long time, and this is my opportunity to embarrass you. So and you've mentored so many people in the industry as well as in the academia and all that, and And with this, you know, the digital transformation, the slow pace of adoption of that sort of,
Yes.
where do you think the challenges are?
Given time, I'm going to keep it brief. Maybe mention 3 points. First of all, I was delighted 2009 to be invited by dear Tommy to QUT, and which was the beginning of this wonderful forum that we have today. I guess 3 challenges. First of all, referring to what Human said earlier. One area that I think it has been a challenge for Australian and international community is the aging infrastructure. We have very old bridges. Some of them date back to more than 100 years ago, and they are still in use. So when we have these tools available to us, it's not really a matter of choice. It's a necessity to use them to basically record what you have, because many of these bridges, for example, have no design drawings at all, or if they are inches and feet and units that we are not familiar with anymore. Very pleased that my colleague, Dr. Rashid, is also here. A couple of projects with Ford Transport for New South Wales. We are actually using digital twinning to record what we have. And some of these are heritage structures, which we need to keep it for posterity. So I think this is one of the challenges, is just the nature of infrastructure. We don't have money to replace them. We have to keep them, and we have to know how they behave now and in the future. So that's the first, perhaps, challenge. The second challenge is, in my opinion, lack of understanding what the structural health monitoring is. Talking to people, a lot of people think structural health monitoring is the same as damage detection. And we have to correct them always, that it's not, someone says there is a crack. Can your structural health monitoring tell me how wide is the crack? That's not the domain of a structural health monitoring. And what is continuous health monitoring? Do we have to do continuous health monitoring? One of our biggest challenges is how to deal with large data. We produce humongous amount of data. How do we deal with it in a meaningful way? This is another major challenge I think you are presented in this domain. And I also agree with all the other challenges that my colleagues mentioned. But because we want to hear from audience, I stop here. Otherwise, we use up the whole 40 minutes and there is no chance for people to ask questions.
Thank you very much, Bijan. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for questions and all that. So if you've got any questions from the audience, and if you want to direct that question to a particular panelist, Simon?
Yeah, thanks so much for all providing your input onto this panel. I think it's been a great discussion. A question for me is the structural health monitoring, I just see it having so much opportunity. I come from a bridge design background, and after doing bridge inspections in the early part of my career, I was like, you know, where's the technological solutions? And structural health monitoring just, it has so much potential, but at the same time, there aren't really any front runners in the industry. Like there are no, you know, dominant players who seem to be owning this space as like, all right, well, we've got it under control. There was the work being done by Xerox with the Victorian government, which seems to collapse for some unbeknownst reasons, but there doesn't seem to have been this emergent, you know, sort of industry at the moment. So long-winded question, but why is that? And what do you see as being the solution to making this more mainstream?
So do you want to direct that one to any particular panelists or?
Yeah, well, just I open up to any other panelists who want to volunteer their response.
Yeah, so it's not appropriate to use this opportunity to just talk about this, but we can this one offline. But there are some green shoots coming out in this industry, and it's hard work, like to to make it happen, because there's a lot of moving parts in there, and we talked about expectations as well. So we've got to manage that, and then just to make it usable in the business sense to derive value, but at the same time make it sort of round truth that with what can be achieved with that. So there are definitely some players in the market, and there's opportunity. We're just only scratching the surface. There's opportunity for a lot more to come, but we can have a chat offline a bit more about that. Someone else would like to add to this?
Yeah, I can say a few words. Yeah, I think also contributing factor is the market is fragmented. Many customers and many players. There is a lack of golden standards. What is ANSHM? What is the best practice? And even I think here is a few places we have done some positional papers about what's ANSHM. I think it's a place there is a lot for us to do to create a standardization concepts, and also that promotion of the technology. That's I think for everyone in this room to work about. That's my comment. Thank you.
Just want to add to that, and I think Simon, a great question, because even I don't have the answer, but I can share the experience. Myself and David Taylor, we are in the board of Prefab Aus. And of course, Prefab Australia is a big industry body. We've been advocating for adoption of off-site construction for many years. And we have seen other countries like Sweden, of course, Japan, they are doing actually 50 to 80% of their buildings, housing using prefab. But why in Australia only 3-4% or 5%? I think over so many years, we haven't seen the change, of course, in terms of digital transformation. We are probably similar. We see technology, we see people want to change, but I think the resistance is so strong in our industry. And I think we have to do a lot more to gain the trust of the industry, public, and they see, let's say prefab, maybe as David very clearly mentioned, the benefit coming from that is quite clear, but it's only from Mervac is the industry leader. We need a lot more. We need many companies using that. Then hopefully the whole thing will change.
But any further questions? So I've got one over there. Could you please introduce yourself and ask questions?
Hello, hi, thank you. My name is Son from Macquarie University. My background is structural engineering and construction. And I'm very interested when David mentioned about digital engineering, digitization, and also change management, management of supply chain. And background in structural design, engineering, consultation, and construction. So when we talk about digitization or trying to work everybody collaboratively through like maybe online platform or something. So there's a different level of collaboration. Okay, so the highest level, for example, BIM, so we have a collaborative level. So the question is still comes down to ownership, the confidentiality, you know what I mean, patenting messages or whatever it is. So how do you deal with that? And also coming from Western Australia, so we have like, mining industry as like, the main industry there. And then when it comes to BIM, so yeah, the understanding is that to use the 3D modeling, but then the level of practice is still not there. And then, for example, a designer will get a 3D model, for example, from Navigator. It's the software. And then that Navigator is not even the editing software. So, but that is already known, okay, we are doing BIM. Okay, so I think there's still a lack of misunderstanding. I mean, sorry, it's a misunderstanding.
Could you please summarize your question, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So there's still a misunderstanding in terms of when you say digital engineering or digitalization, when you say BIM, there's still a misunderstanding of the actual, what actually it is, how do you deal with that?
So you're directing this question to
the ownership issue, and then, yeah, the lack of, it's like there's no mutual understanding when it comes to application of the online platform or digital engineering technology.
So your questions are on IP, right? So
I think your comments about intellectual property and the inability to share is something I've had severe challenges with, if I've got to be honest. I'll share just a little anecdotal story when I was talking to a fairly global software company that's in manufacturing, and we're obviously a residential builder, and we're on a Teams meeting because that's what everyone's been doing lately. And they didn't realize that their chat function was actually on. And I was talking about sharing our Revit model, converting it to an IFC and sharing it with the manufacturer. So their Sapphire software in the manufacturing facility could actually read what we've modeled. And so they don't have to model from scratch. And in the chat function, they were actually making fun of him, saying, can you believe this guy? It's like Ford selling secrets to Holden. It was actually quite great to be able to say, mate, I don't think you realize your chat function was on, but let me just explain something to you. I'm a builder and a developer. You're a software designer. I'm not sure how we're Ford and Holden. But if we don't drop this concept of sharing IP as being as something that we cannot get around, we'll never advance. I think the reality of sharing IP comes down to you have to have balance. There's certain things you protect for yourself because we need to create competitive advantage in certain sectors. And there's certain things you should be able to share. That's a very broad statement. Once you start getting into the detail, you realize it's quite hard to do that sometimes. I think the biggest way that we're going to get around that, and I will keep saying it until I'm, literally blue in the face, is sharing the benefits for those stakeholders in order to share that IP. It is not something that we can expect businesses to let go of what gives them profitability edge over their competitors. However, in this country, as people have described, there's plenty of other countries in the world that are so significantly more advanced. And if you looked at their trajectory of advancement, it was much quicker than ours. We've known about digital engineering for 10 years. We've known about its benefit, but we're so slow to adopt. What I'm finding is shifting that needle is educating those stakeholders about the financial benefits. And I think there was a really good point made by your presentation where you talked at the end about operational benefit. OPEX benefit, CAPEX benefit, the ability to create efficiency within your business. We're in a state of the market, whatever sector you're in, where operational efficiency, creating better outcomes on your P&L balance sheet. Use that angle, get different stakeholders to understand the value for your business in dollars, and you'll be surprised how people start to slowly open the book a little bit. And it just takes a bit of time. That first meeting we had with that organization, they were very apologetic, of course, after the meeting. Now, 5 years later, since I had that chat, they're now talking to their global counterparts saying, look what we're doing in Australia. We're sharing IP in the digital world for the first time. And they're starting to try and replicate that in other areas. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's a very, very big problem. And I think is one of the biggest challenges to why we're slowly adopting. No one wants to share anything.
Awesome. Thanks, David, for that. We've got one question from the online audience. How are you managing the risk aversion of architects and engineers of handing over models?
I think that's pretty much what I.
Yes. Yeah, probably sort of
the future apparent.
Address that. So do you have any more questions from you?
Hi, Julie Jupp, Associate Professor of Digital Engineering here at UTS. I just wanted to dig a little bit into those last two questions from Simon and yourself with regard to data ownership and structural health monitoring being a very particular type of data, and not just talking beyond data ownership to the value of that data and the risk and potential for litigation in outsourcing those structural health monitoring services. My question, if I can kind of unpack this, is with regard to structural barriers within our industry. Our industry is quite fragmented. And if you look to learn from other sectors that have really spearheaded structural health monitoring, it's been born from product lifecycle management and closed loop product lifecycle management. How can we utilize this data to design better airplanes, better buildings, better bridges. My question pertains to what do you see moving beyond the technological barriers? What do you see as the main barriers with regard to our supply chain and how we not only share data in the delivery of infrastructure, but throughout the life cycle of the infrastructure?
That's a really important question, or a very big question, and probably will take a long time to unpack that. Perhaps either Chen or him it's all about sort of just data. You're collecting a lot of data. Then there's the integrity of the data is one piece, and sharing that data, the ownership, the risks, and all that. What's your views on it?
From transport's perspective, that was a couple of weeks ago that transport released its data strategy, and that is publicly available. I mean, how the transport sees data as the asset, and encourages different parties, academia, public sector, it doesn't matter, just to get use of publicly available data. We've got a platform to provide those sorts of information through open data, and we've got another area just leveraging APIs as well for the stream of the data as well. At the same time, we've got classification of different data. Perhaps that's obvious that for say something like Sydney Harbour Bridge, they are classified data, but not for regional bridges and something like that. They are sort of things that should be available for everyone to start adding or creating added values based on those ones. And this is how we've been dealing with our partners. I mean, universities and everywhere else. Going to future, perhaps, that was one of my slides that I wanted to show, was around IoT ecosystem, basically just how the different layers of technology stitched together to produce those sort of insights. And the encompassing area would be the cybersecurity as well. And that is something that we are extensively working just to create frameworks and other things that if we are sharing data with publicly or with interested parties, we just do that collaboration or sharing in a safe manner. But that is in a nutshell how we are dealing with data at the moment.
Yes, there's something I would like to add regarding those data. I'm so happy to hear that the TF and SW, they are happy to share the data with the academic and all that. So that's our idea. I think earlier mentioned about in Australia, the ANSHM, there are not many main players, but actually to me, I don't think so. I'm not that agree with that, because I noticed that all the road authorities like the TF and SW, like the QTTMR or the Wake Roads, they are trying to incorporate ANSHM in managing their assets. So that is something that I am pleased to look at. And then the pity is we have experts in Australia that can help, but so if the road authorities or that, then they could help us, the local expert, to work together to help to develop better system or better scheme on that. So regarding the data, I always mention about that if possible, that we could have all these data to be shared in the public domain, and then different universities, different experts in the ANSHM, they can make use of those data, and to deliver something useful for them. And then these from the asset owner, they could see that, oh, it really works. And then they will not become skeptical, and then getting more and more people are happy to adopt this kind of method. So that is something in that I'm so pleased to hear that the TF and SW, I think the other road authorities, they are also happy. So we just like to make use of those data, and then ANSHM could be a platform to coordinate, to have different experts in Australia to work on those data and to deliver something useful for them.
Yes, that's a very interesting dilemma we have here. And that is, as Tommy said, he only used the word road authorities. I think government has a very important role in this. Government gives the money and doesn't mind who uses it. Private people are not like that. So I think we need to approach government more aggressively and fund some of these projects so that we can share the data, because companies that invest, they want to keep it to themselves. And in fact, the other challenges, I've been working in the area of structural health monitoring, but prior to that, structural cooperation control. And we wanted to, for example, put a couple of sensors on top of a building to monitor the response during heavy winds. We couldn't do it because nobody wants to be labeled that 1 in 1,000 chance your building moves excessively. You can, and if you found that, you can never tell anyone. They get you to sign one of these things. What do we call it?
NDA,
Disclosure.
non-disclosure agreement.
Disclosure that if my building has the slightest problem, no one has to know. And with that attitude, of course, you can't progress because your mouth is shut forever. You have to change some of these cultures. The government put money in. They're quite happy for that to be shared around. Private companies don't. It's the reality of the situation.
Thanks, Bijan. We've got a question from Henry from Engine Analysis. Yeah.
I guess it's just a comment that I think that's a good thing. I think it's important just to drive competition and innovation, and that we can use organizations like ANSHM as the sorts of information of who's out there, who does what. Because when there's more people or companies trying to do it, we get more solutions, and it keeps. Yeah, I think it's a good thing anyway. That was all.
No, thanks for your comment. And on that, sort of just follow on from that and the previous thing. So obviously we've got academics in the panel, representatives from the government departments and private sector and people from research background. So what we need to do to help create a thriving startup ecosystem in this space, so that like government authorities would let them try a few things, and if they file, let them file fast, but give them opportunity to develop something and use our test beds with the challenges and see whether we can foster that innovation. So Herman, so if you got some thoughts on that, then we'll get views from our members from the academia.
I just go back to the first point with regard to, AS5100 is a good example, because that was, part 7 was developed in close collaboration with your organization, I believe. But in terms of educating end users, perhaps there is a bit of work needs to be done, because the whole idea is just to show the value that we can derive out of these sorts of activities. If it's proven to be working, perhaps the message can get across much more easier and more effectively. That's one thing. Another thing is that transport has got many touch points on the sandboxing that you mentioned. When we've got different areas to actually identify opportunities for this sort of collaboration through innovation. And actually, I was supposed to have my colleague here, Michelle Liu, and she is the one managing collaboration with industry. And these are sort of conduits. I just pass on her information to you later on, that if there is a need just to do sandbox environments, testing the technology and just showing the the value that we can get out of that, then there are avenues within organization that can be utilized.
Thank you. So maybe I'll go back to Bizen again, like, how do you think we can help sort of promote that, from, Tommy and Bizen, like, if you can sort of both share your thoughts as to how, like, the university, obviously, you've got all these universities that they've got now startup hubs and all that. So how, like academia sort of help them find a pathway through the end users, collaboration with end users to promote that type of ecosystem. Because you got experience with Curlew, right?
Yes, I think Vision has mentioned earlier. So the first thing is we could have the access of the data. The second one is we have the funding to work on all these. And then at the same time, so what we try to do is we direct a lot of things today we discuss, and then later in the afternoon, we will have our ANSHM advisory board meeting. We'll discuss that. One thing I think Human mentioned about that is about, we have the standard, but it seems that we need to educate or to help people understand how to make use of the standard for the ANSHM. So I think that is something that we really need to do to work on it. So this kind of workshop is helpful, but at the moment, I think the audience that we can approach is still confined, still limited, I think. And what we just need to discuss what we can do better. I think after the COVID, before the COVID, we have some idea like to have the company to organize workshop for the company to help them understand better what they expect and all that. I think we could continue to work on all that. So we are happy to go to TFNSW, go to some public company there, and then try to tell them what actually ANSHM can work for and what they can help them to manage their asset or to deliver something for the users.
So thanks, Tommy. Finally, Bizen, like, your thoughts, particularly in relation to supporting and promoting startups.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to perhaps address it slightly differently. Education, I think our universities need a lot of education as well. Universities want to make money out of intellectual properties. Their job is to support research. I had so many experiences that we had, for example, a project taking 12 months to be approved by not to be named organizations with funding. 9 months of the 12 months has been on negotiating who gets what, how many dollars you are going to keep and where it goes. Who cares? Have you heard of any university in Australia making money out of IP? I don't know any. If anybody comes to me and says, we just made $10 million by selling this concept, I'd like to know. But universities don't do that. And they have become an obstacle, a bottleneck, an additional bottleneck that is not necessary. So let's educate universities, industries, keep the niche as was mentioned for commercial benefits. That's quite fair. But let's not forget that a lot of funding comes from governments, and universities are also governments. They're funded by the government. So this ownership that is my data and hands off is strange to me, because we have to be sharing and let everyone use it. That's the only way we can actually improve. And if Ali's institution benefits from this, so be it. Doesn't have to be my institution. Both are Australian institutions. So what is this you and I? It's a we, not you or I. It's a we. Let's always not forget that.
Thank you very much. So any final thoughts?
Just a quick comment, just to follow up with what Vision mentioned. I think of course, Vision got a lot of experience, but also want to share my own experience, even working with many startups in the last few years in in different areas. But totally agree with Vision. I think we need education on both sides because there's been ongoing battle about who's own the IP, who going to share what. I think going back to the success story of startup, only 10% will go to the commercialization, and of course, a long way between the proof of concept to a commercial products. And I see a big gap at the value of that, and a lot of company got great ideas, but really couldn't go to the next level. So I think we need to understand the risks. The university, they don't want to take risks. I think they just want to say the benefit might not come at all. So I think things like that will be fully understood between industry and university. That's my own experience.
Thank you, Tron. Chen, any last final thoughts?
UTS is making money off IP. No, I think I'm just given my experience working for ITS Australia, which is an industrial peak body. I thought ANSHM as a group can play a more proactive role in harmonizing the technology, the definition terminologies, in standardizing the technology and systems, and also promoting the best practice. Either we can produce papers and white purpose positional papers, or we can work with the industry to organize summits and basically to workshop and promote those best practice to create that awareness and grow the ecosystem. I think that's the role potentially for ANSHM to play.
Yep. Thank you.
I noticed that Incheon has
Yes.
looked at that.
Right.
Discuss that later.
This is the best part right here.
All right. So yeah, look, it's been a fantastic discussion. Like, it's very, very rich, as well as like there's a real desire there to collaborate and support and promote digital transformation and the associated technology. So please join me to thank our panelists for their contribution to this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, we really seriously running out of time, but it's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to probably move to next session, and later on we'll shorten a little bit our lunch time, and hopefully that's probably best we can do. What we have next one is